Where are we driving? Do you like getting up close and personal? Did you main Dark Trooper in Star Wars Battlefront 2? Do you have a chronic need to slap? Well, if you haven't read the title of the video yet, I want to introduce you to the best melee troops for your 30k Legion, and I'm gonna prove it. My name is Mechanid. Let's get started. Assault Marines. These guys are great. And first, some lore. Equipped with jump packs, these Marines take to the skies in short bursts, coming crashing down to engage the enemy in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Swapping heavy weapons for a panoply of swords, axes, maces, and pistols, Assault Marines crank the Shock Trooper element of the Astartes up to 11, leveraging the sheer savagery of Marines and their skill in melee. From fast-moving skirmishers to devastating line breakers, Assault Marines provide commanders with fast-moving, mobile flexibility. Now, the stats and special rules. Assault Marines don't really have any extra special rules, like Tactical Marines or Despoilers, but what they do have is the Warhawk Jump Pack. This is their signature piece of kit, and this is what makes Assault Marines so special. At the start of your movement phase, or when deploying as a deep striker, you can choose to set your movement to 12. This also grants you an extra +2 inch to your charge range, since you count as being fast. You ignore all terrain modifiers unless you start or end your movement in dangerous terrain, in which case you must make a terrain test as normal. When you run after using a jump pack, you add your initiative as normal, but this run also ignores terrain. You can also move over other models this way, so there's no risk of you getting body blocked. Models with a jump pack gain bulky 2 or increase their bulky value by 1, meaning they'll take up extra room inside transports. However, you cannot activate your jump packs when you make a movement reaction, so you're stuck with your base initiative there. Models with a jump pack also gain Hammer of Wrath 1 and Deep Strike, more on these later. And now, the pros and cons. First, the pros. Fast. These guys have the highest movement of any base Legion troops choice, and with their ability to hop over terrain and models means you can get where you want, when you want to. This mobility also lets you pick and choose your fights, giving you the flexibility on the battlefield. Deep Strike. This special rule gives you plenty of options for deployment, from holding them in reserve to back up a flank or to drop them in as a coup de grace to steal the game. Because Assault Marines want to get up close and personal, they can make much more use of their Wargear than other Legion troops choices, like pistols for example. Starting with pistols and close combat weapons as base means you'll be getting a lot more attacks in melee. This, coupled with their speed and special rules like Hammer of Wrath, means you're likely to get the charge off for even more attacks and do even more damage in melee. While not a major part of their playbook, Hammer of Wrath is a rule worth touching on. When you make a successful charge with a model with Hammer of Wrath, you get to make a number of additional attacks equal to the value in brackets, which automatically hits another model in base-to-base contact with that model. These attacks come in at base strength user and AP dash, and can't be modified, but do hit at initiative 10, which means they'll hit first. While you only get a handful and they're unlikely to kill a Space Marine equivalent profile, these attacks may steal a cheeky kill or shave a wound off here or there, and because they happen so early in the fight phase, this means you can potentially stack the deck in your favour before the melee starts in earnest. Also, because these hits are automatically assigned to the model in base-to-base contact with the model making the Hammer of Wrath attacks, this allows you, with a bit of clever positioning, to put those attacks onto specific models, letting you get around wound scumming and allows you to try and crush characters and equipment characters before the combat begins. This is just another way of saying that you, as the Assault Marine player, need to be the one making the charges and dictating the flow of the game. However, there are some cons. Expensive. Especially when factoring in Wargear, assault squads can get very expensive very fast. It is a very real temptation to go all in and load these guys up with loads of gear. So remember that this is, at the end of the day, just one of your troops' choices. Limited Wargear and uses outside of charging and melee. This makes Assault Marines a bit narrower in gameplay and tactics than other troops' choices, despite their flexibility in movement and deployment. Only weapon skill 4. While Assault Marines will fare better in melee because of their kit, if they run into any squad with weapon skill 5 or are hit with concussive or blind weapons, they will really struggle to make their points back. Lack of durability. Even with Artificer armor and combat shields, more on these later, they lack the durability of breachers or even tactical squads who are on objectives. Bear this in mind if they get caught out in the open. Lack of any extra special rules. Outside of the Warhawk jump back and the effects that it brings, they don't get any rules like Heart of the Legion or Spite of the Legion, meaning that Assault Marines are relying on their kit to earn their keep. Wargear. Now this is the real meat and potatoes of the Assault Squad. First, weapons. For every 5 models in the unit, you can take one of these weapons. First, a heavy chainsword. If a chainsword is cool, then a heavy chainsword is extra cool. Cheap at only 2 points a pop, and with an extra 2+ strength, means you'll be reliably wounding Marines on 2s with a reroll from Shred. Two-handed does mean you trade an extra attack for that reliability, so take that into consideration if you prefer lots of attacks instead. For a modelling tip, you can always use Eviscerators from the old Blood Angels kits. Charnable weapons. These are kind of weird weapons which I personally see used very rarely. These are specialist dueling weapons, each with an extra version of Duelist Edge, granting you an extra initiative when you're inside a challenge. However, the AP dash on all these weapons means that unless you roll hot, they're going to suffer, especially against power armor. I personally prefer the more consistent armor piercing effects of power weapons. That being said, if you are going to take these, do so on sergeants or models you intend to throw into a challenge to make the best use of their special rules. Each one can be taken for 5 points. First, the Saber. Strength user, Duelist Edge 1 and breaching 5+ makes for a fair weapon, but you'll feel the lack of AP if you don't breach. The Charnable Tabar. +2 strength, but only breaching on a 6+ and Duelist Edge 1 means that while you're more likely to wound, you are less likely to push through heavy armor. I would pass on this one. The Charnable Glaive. My choice out of any of the Charnable weapons. While two-handed, so you don't get the extra attacks, getting +1 strength and breaching 5+ gives you a decent shot at wounding and pushing through armor. In addition, Duelist Edge 2 gives you a great speed boost against power lances and other charnable weapons, making you a solid duelist, especially against other characters kitted out to take on duels. Overall, I think charnable weapons suffer from their lack of base AP, so unless you trigger a breach, even a 6+ armor save will get a save against you. In short, they require a lot to go right for you to make them work. You need to be in a challenge, you need to hit, you need to roll those breaches as well. However, if you think striking first and potentially killing your target before they can hit you is worth the trade, then go for it. I'd be interested to see if you can make them work. Power weapons. This is where the real meat of the squad comes into play. Getting to hide a power weapon, or 3 in a squad, gives you a powerful edge in melee over other troops' choices and even some elites. All power weapons come with AP 3 or better, and each costs you 5 points, which is a big discount over other squads. The Power Sword. My least favourite of the power weapons because it's kind of shit. The rending 6+ is fine, I guess, but with other choices, these don't measure up well, unless you get bonuses for swords. Lancers. The hipster choice, but a fun one. Getting +1 strength is good, but reach 1 gives you a flat +1 initiative whether you are in a challenge or not, so take that, charnable weapons. This lets you squeak in a cheeky kill or two before your opponent can strike, letting you get an edge over other close combat troops, taking away kills from the dice pool before they can be made. Axes. The Armor Buster. Coming in at +1 strength and AP 2 lets you threaten Artificer and Terminator armor. However, the unwieldy means you're striking at initiative 1, so take this if you have a plan to weather the attacks that'll hit you before you can hit them. Maces. My favourite choice. At +2 strength and AP 3, this gives you a solid anti-marine weapon and has the best chance to wound out of any of the other power weapons. Overall, I think power weapons beat out charnable weapons in pretty much all scenarios apart from very specific niche dueling scenarios, and are all viable weapons against other power armor targets. Pistols. Sergeants, and 1 in every 5 models, has access to a number of special pistols. Normally I wouldn't recommend pistols, however, given the MO of charging straight into the enemy, pistols can be much more relevant for assault marines, as you'll most likely be in range to use them. Hand flaming. Out of all the pistols, this is by far the worst. Even with the template potentially netting you a lot of hits, its mediocre strength and no AP means you're unlikely to convert these into dead minis. Unless you're fighting militia, I'd pass on this one, despite how cool it is. The Volkite Serpenter. Good if you want to increase the shooting output of your squad with good strength shooting. A solid choice if you've got the 5 points to spend, just watch out for the weird 10-inch range. Plasma Pistol. A great choice for 10 points. With a good roll, you can threaten 2+ armor saves at range. The risk of killing yourself is always present, but it's worth it to get that breaching shot off. Also note that the 1 in 5 clause is separate for power weapons and for pistols. This means you can have up to 2 special pistols and 2 power weapons, plus whatever the sergeant has in a 10-man squad. I wouldn't recommend this as it puts a lot of eggs in one basket, but if you do, I'd spread them out among the models in the squad to keep as much damage potential as possible even as the squad takes casualties. Sergeant upgrades. Sergeants can take power weapons for 10 points or charnable weapons for also 10 points, as opposed to the 5 points that regular assault marines get to take them for, so there's a bit of an upcharge. However, sergeants have several other options which are a bit more appealing. First, lightning claws. The sergeant can swap his weapons for a pair of lightning claws for 15 points as opposed to taking a single claw for only 10. Even with Specialist Weapon, if you take a pair, they will still get the +1 attack. Also, having both Shred and Rending means you can reliably put out a lot of attacks to threaten 3+ and even 2+ armor. If you do take Claws, I'd recommend a pair rather than a single, to maximize attacks, and losing a pistol isn't really anything to lose sleep over. The Power Fist. This is what you take if you really want to ruin someone's day. Despite being unwieldy, the ×2 strength and the great AP lets you smash through armor and even light vehicles with ease. Melter Bombs. The Sarge can take a Melter Bomb for 10 points. Personally, I'd save these points and rather buy Artificer Armor instead, or if you want to be able to take on tanks in melee, I'd shell out for a Power Fist instead, as you'll get more attacks that way and you've got versatility when fighting against things that can't be Melter Bombed. The Sergeant can also take Artificer Armor for 10 points, which is always a good shout, especially if you can pull off an Evo-style save moment. Squad upgrades. The entire squad can take Combat Shields. This gives them a 6+ invulnerable save and can be taken with no drawbacks. However, this will quickly stack up the points cost, and a 6+ save isn't great. The save will only be relevant against things like breaching plasma guns or las cannons, and will only save a couple of guys against such a volley. But you do get the extra bonus for cool factor. Extra Assault Marines. You can take up to 10 additional Assault Marines for 12 points apiece. Compare this to the cost of 14.5 points apiece if you're taking an extra squad instead. Also, every extra 5 guys gives you another option to adding pistols and extra power weapons. Now onto tactics, loadouts, and uses. First, Deep Strike. The fact that Assault Marines get Deep Strike built into their profile for free cannot be understated. Much like Infiltrate, this gives you options for deployment, but instead of sneaking your guys on before the battle starts, you can descend from the heavens like God's favourite super soldier. While we're not going to go into the full ins and outs of Deep Strike today, in a nutshell, it means you have a chance of dropping onto the board in turns 2 and 3, and definitely deploying on turn 4 anywhere you want onto the board. While the risk of getting intercepted is always present, especially if your opponent has lots of augury scanners about, the fact that you can drop anywhere gives you massive flexibility in determining your battle plan. And, with the speed at which Assault Marines move, a bad scatter isn't really the end of the world. Being able to deep strike a line unit will let you claw back an objective or steal it away from an enemy squad at the end of the game. How you use Deep Strike will largely determine how the squad plays, and it should inform how you kit them out. If you are going for an aggressive steal an objective Hail Mary play, then I would recommend extra defensive kit to give the Assault Marines the ability to survive their drop, as it's likely they'll be dropping into area contested by enemy forces. Either way, I'd recommend having an idea in mind if you want to deep strike the squad before you choose their kit. I would also recommend taking a Nuncio Vox or 2 on other squads if you choose to deep strike. This piece of kit, coupled with a line of sight to the drop zone, will help with your consistency of your drops as it lets you re-roll the scatter dice. Also, don't feel tied to deep strike. It's an optional deployment, and Assault Marines can function just fine jetting up the flank or deployed centrally where their high movement speed lets them stay flexible and get to any part of the board in time. Combat. The all-important part of the Assault Marines, and where they will make their points back. Despite all of their pros, I would always bear in mind that they are only weapon skill 4, and outside of Hammer of Wrath, they don't have any other special rules to help you out in melee. As such, they will be relying on their kit and the sheer weight of attacks and getting the charge off to really pack a punch in melee. As such, with things like Hammer of Wrath and your speed boost charge, you're really incentivized to get that charge off, and I think if you're not making that charge, the squad is going to really suffer. This may sound obvious, but it's worth saying. If you're not getting the charge bonuses off for the extra attacks or the Hammer of Wrath hits, the odds suddenly slide out of your favour, especially when you're going up against more elite units like Veterans or hard targets like Terminators. Mobility. The Assault Squad's mobility lets them jump across the battlefield and greatly increases their threat range and what targets they actually have. Much like a knight in chess, you can use the Assault Squad to attack from inside your opponent's blind spot. You can always charge around corners. Use this to dodge things like Overwatch, which would normally shred the Assault Squad when they come in. Now onto loadouts and uses. Deployed via deep strike or on the flank, these guys are set to nab an objective or attack a backfield unit. With minimal or defensive kit, this squad only needs to be able to kill or trade with other Marines and light units. I'd recommend either completely bare bones or with defensive upgrades like Artificer Armor or Combat Shields. Just bear in mind the squad is fragile for its points, so you need to plan ahead of this and use other units to clear the way for them. The next, a screening unit. Deployed just behind your gun line or held in reserves for rapid defense. This squad is held back to defend your home turf and to intercept incoming attackers. Equipment is more dependent on what you're most likely to fight, so power axes for Terminators and hard targets, or power balls for infantry crushing. Just be aware of spending too much points, as it's likely they'll die during or just after their first screening action, so be careful on burning too many points on their upgrades. However, this can be a good way of using them in gunline armies where Assault Marines and Assault troops wouldn't normally see too much play. While it may be tempting to go vehicle hunting, only the Sergeant is likely to be able to damage them with either a Power Fist or a Melter Bomb. I would avoid using Assault Marines against hard targets and instead send them up against light to medium infantry and leave the armor busting to others. For general loadouts, I'd recommend Artificer on the Sergeant as standard, and then either combat shields or an apothecary, and then as many power maws or power axes as you can afford. I would also leave any of the pistols at home and just go straight for melee. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Characters. While you can put consoles and other characters in the squad, they have to be able to take a jump pack if they want to keep up with the squad. I think overall, putting such a character is a waste of points, and you'd be better off with a more elite retinue for those units. That being said, I think the best option for a character is a Legion Apothecary. An Apothecary will give the squad extra durability to survive on their way in, granting them a 5+ feel no pain to shrug off incoming damage. I'd really recommend an Apothecary for an assault squad, and there'll be more on them in a future video. Legion considerations. Assault Marines really shine in any close combat legions, so Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Night Lords and Sons of Horus and World Eaters, just to name a few. However, they can also be used as screening and objective grabbers in shooting legions. I personally use them in my Alpha Legion to jump out and countercharge incoming attackers before they can reach my gun line, or to drop in late game to steal an objective, especially if I'm lacking that reach and I don't have units in that particular area. Comparisons. First, Legion Assault Destroyers. Consider these if you prefer more mobile shooting as opposed to melee units, or if you want to rock some more exotic weaponry. I'd consider these guys if you want more raw damage output with special rules that support them in combat like counterattack. However, they are in the elite slot, which is very crowded in Space Marine Legions lists. Next, Veterans. While slower than Assault Marines and without the option for jetpacks needing a transport to keep pace, Veterans get Weapon Skill 5, which cannot be understated how powerful it is, especially when you're going up against Weapon Skill 4 units like other Assault Marines. Also, the entire unit can take power weapons, which, while expensive, can just smash through whole units of Marines. However, as above, Vets are in the elite slot, which is a lot of units competing for your attention. If you're looking for units to cap objectives, also consider Recon Marines, or something like Breachers in a drop pod. Overall, Assault Marines have a good niche, as fast jetpack troops with line and without support squad. They are only really outdone in this regard by expensive elite units or completely basic units like Tacticals. Counterplay. Assault Marines' lack of durability means any sustained anti-infantry firepower will cut them down. Even bolters are a risk, let alone something like plasma guns. The Interceptor reaction can easily spell doom for a deep striking assault squad, so make sure to clear the way or otherwise exhaust the reactions or pin down the squad that would be performing the Interceptor reaction before the Assault Marines drop in, as you may otherwise be throwing away all the points you spend on those Assault Marines. However, the biggest threat to Assault Marines is being chipped to death. This death by 1,000 cuts is because Assault Marines rely on their weight of attacks and their power weapons to really make their impact. Losing a substantial number of their squad or having their weapon carriers sniped out from under them will render the squad combat ineffective very quickly. Likewise, running into a hard target they cannot fight like Terminators or a unit of weapon skill 5 or worse, a Dreadnought, will likely see the squad routed in short order. Finally, if they don't win the initial charge, Assault Marines can suffer in protracted combat after losing their extra attacks and impact hits from Hammer of Wrath. What this means is that Assault Marines really require planning ahead, so pick your charges and choose your battles carefully. Where to buy, convert, or use as other units. The new box is a good shout for a quick and easy way to put Assault Marines on the table, but I'd always consider going third party or otherwise getting a discount and not buying directly from Games Workshop. Likewise, any of the old Assault Marine kits are good, but will lack some of the options like combat shields and the larger bases potentially. Or, squads like Sanguinary Guard can be used to add the extra bling to the squad. Also, don't listen to what the armor autists say, you can absolutely use later Marine marks in the Heresy, it's fine. eBay, third-party retailers, or other second-hand sellers are always a good shout, as are 3D printed bits to help convert excess Tactical Marines into Assault Marines if you've got one of the larger box sets. You can always use Assault Marines as destroyers or specific Legion units like Dawnbreakers or Night Raptors, for example. In summary, if you are a 900 IQ mega genius like me, you will use Assault Marines. They are mobile, flexible, close combat troops that can pivot into roles of objective grabbers when needed. With a great kit to make up for what they lack in special rules, they will greatly benefit from a daring and brave commander. Convinced? Good. If not, go back to the start and try again, brainlet. Still here? Good. That means you're smart enough to hear me say, thanks for watching. With this video, we are back to Legion options, and I'm looking for suggestions as the next unit or topic to choose. I'm looking to tackle something like a tank perhaps, but let me know if there's something that you really want to see in future videos. As with always, thanks for the support and feedback. You guys are great. My name is Mechanid. Thanks for watching. Especially when factoring in Wargear, Assault Squads. Why can't I say this line?